Now, I'm excited to introduce our keynote speaker and moderator for our morning keynote session. Please help me welcome our keynote speaker, Matt Creason, and our moderator, Chase Murphy, to the stage.
Thank you again for being here, and Raj, thanks for the introduction, and Vic, thanks so much for having us here today, and really looking forward to it. You know, I had a chance to meet Matt last week, and he has such an awesome story, and hopefully I can do it justice, but to caveat, I did formulate the questions using ChatGPT, so if they stink, we're going to blame the technology, but no. Yeah, exactly. This story is so compelling, it's going to be great. So maybe just as a starting point, love to hear background. Where are you from? How'd you grow up? Just brief background would be great.
I grew up in Irving, Texas. Actually, I was down the south side, Story and Shady Grove. My mom was a teacher in Irving ISD for years. And went to Nimitz High School for 3 years, transferred over to Irving High School my last year because I had hopes of being a golfer, and unfortunately Nimitz didn't quite have the golf team that Irving did. So I thought that was kind of my avenue to go play golf for a living. And turns out that wasn't the case, obviously, that's why I'm here, but.
I think it worked out all right in the grand scheme of things. But so leading to the next question, selfishly my favorite topic, and I think there's a lot of great fundamentals in life around it, but what got you to even start playing golf to begin with? Like, why'd you start playing? Why do you still play? I mean, you're still an active golfer, right?
Yeah, no, I love the game. I still think it's probably one of the most challenging games that there are out there, but I was an avid baseball player, soccer player growing up, and Texas has a unique talent of breeding some really incredible baseball players. And about the time I was 12, my dad was like, you know, golf's a single-man sport. You kind of win it, lose it on your own. You don't have a team to back you up, and you want to keep playing because the swings don't quite work together. If you try to play both, it's terrible. And so I decided, let's go play golf. Let's chase that dream, see what could happen, and went through high school, decided that I was going to go try to play some mini tour golf, and kind of took me down the avenue, which ultimately led to where I am today with Shift Key. So I love the game of golf. I credit it with putting me in the position I am today. I met some of the people along the way on the golf course, so I still stand behind business happens on the golf course. You know, I love it.
I try to use that excuse too, but our managing partner doesn't like it as much. But and I asked that question for a reason, just because it seems like several different angles of the conversations we had kind of led back to golf and around your career trajectory. And so, you know, you started trying to play some mini tours. I'm sure at some point in time realized you needed a real job, and so kind of took you to your first gig, right? Which then again comes full circle here in a bit. But tell us a little bit about first job and maybe how that laid the foundation for where you started to head from there.
Yeah, so fast forward 2 years of me trying to play mini tour. I graduated in 2002, and everybody knows Tiger Woods went on his run in 1997, so he changed the game of golf. Well, pre-Tiger Woods, it was easy to go out and compete. Post-Tiger Woods, I realized very quickly I have no chance of actually making it, and so I had to go find a real job. I had dropped out of college. I have 42 college hours at Northlake College right up the hill in Irving, and dropped out, convinced my mom, who again was a teacher, that I think going and playing golf was going to be my avenue. And once I realized that wasn't going to be the case, now it was like, well, where are you going to go? How are you going to go make money? And a couple of my buddies, they had worked for a company called Merritt Hawkins, and they were like, man, you should go here. These guys do physician staffing. They all wear really nice suits, drive nice cars. You know, you have a chance of covering my financial obligations at the time. I had a son at home, and I was like, well, I'll go check it out. I'll go find this place. Well, I ended up going in there, and they had a sister company that was called Staff Care. They said, well, why don't you go work over at Staff Care? We'll give you a job. You're going to work under this guy named Tom Ellis. He's going to be your sales manager, and your RVP is going to be Mike Vitek, who, when the story comes full circle, you'll hear those names again in my story. But I show up there, and it's make 200 phone calls a day and spend as much time as you can on the phone trying to find doctors to do locum assignments. And that was ultimately what got my foot into healthcare staffing. And had you asked me if that's what I was going to do, I would have told you there's no way that's what my career was going to be. But That company ends up 6 months after I joined, a big healthcare conglomerate, AMN Healthcare, bought out Staff Care and Merritt Hawkins, and they asked me. They said, do you want to stay on? The division that I was in was going to move to like Salt Lake City area. I had kids. I was like, I can't do that. And so I ultimately left, went with a couple other guys that had done some physician staffing, that had taken a little bit of money during that buyout, and kind of in the realm of figuring out what I was going to do, and knowing that I was going to have to find another job. You start casting the net of resumes. And 8 months after I took the job with this other company, a lady calls me and says, hey, I want you to come look at our nurse staffing company. I was like, nurse staffing? What? I'm physician staffing. Like, they've got me in golden handcuffs. Why would I go do that? She said, just come do a working interview. Come find out, what this is all about. I show up one day, we get on a phone call. She says, I'm going to talk to all the branch managers today, and I want you to just listen and tell me if it's something you want to do. The one thing I remember was she asked a question. She said, how many sales phone calls do you guys make in a day? The highest answer I heard, 25. So coming from a background of I make 200 phone calls a day and spend 3 hours on the phone, immediately I smelled blood in the water. I was like, I can go do this. I can make this work. And that's where I started my first endeavor into anything that even revolved nurse staffing, healthcare staffing. Fast forward through that, as a sales guy, what do, right? You figure out, why do people want to buy your product? Why don't they want to buy your product? And you start figuring out ways to reverse engineer it to make it better. And so I started to come up with some great ideas, and I'm not a big, happy Thanksgiving, happy birthday. I'm terrible. My wife will tell you, she has to remind me. It's like, hey, it's people's birthday today. Text them and tell them happy birthday. I'm so bad at it. It's definitely something I wish I was better at. But I'm sitting at my mom's house, and I hadn't talked to Tom in a while, and I just shoot him this random message. I'm like, hey, man, happy Thanksgiving. Haven't talked to you in a while. Let's get together. He says,
Tom being your manager at the
Tom,
original.
who was my manager at my original company, yeah. And he goes, man, I'm working on this deal. Let's go play golf. Let's go, reconnect. Here we are back on a golf course. And he says, what are you trying to do? I said, man, I'm trying to do this nurse staffing thing. I think it'll work. He says, well, I'm doing this locums thing. Why don't you just come join up with me? We'll go 50-50. I'll run mine, you run yours. And fast forward, this is 2012, take the job. I start day one, start just doing everything's working, everything's syncing up. I tell Tom, I go, we'll be at 400 hours a week. We measured all the success metric for us was, how many nursing hours are you booking in a week? And I told him, I said, when we're working our way there, we'll be at 400 or 500 hours. We get to about 350. Tom's business, through some different changes in management, wasn't doing as well, but he's starting to lean in a little bit more on mine, and we're out playing golf again. Another circles back to golf, and I'm on the phone. I've got a nurse on one line, and I'm going, hey, can you go to work? And the other, I've got a DON at a facility. I'm like, hey, she can be there at 2:30. And this is back and forth game. This is how it used to work. It was just a Rolodex of people that you would just call through, and you would just be brokering these shifts back and forth. And Tom looks at me and he goes, dude, we're never going to be able to finish a round of golf if we keep getting busy. It's like, what's more important here? You want to finish a round of golf, or you want to have a successful company? And he goes, we should just build a system that can just do all this for us. And both of us were sales guys. We had no background in coding or anything. And I look at him and I go, hey, you build it, I'll sell that thing. And that was just this very passive conversation that kind of started the evolution of where we went. It was just a fleeting thought. It wasn't anything with substance. It wasn't like, yeah, let's go back and do it tomorrow. It was just, he just said it passively, right? Like, hey, what if we just invented this app that would just connect everybody together, right? Well, yeah, good luck. Let's go figure it out, and maybe it'll work. So that's ultimately, it was like the beginning story. Everything was kind of around this idea of golf.
And cheers to that for sure. You got to get through the round. That's what's important. So interesting, it all catalyzed around the desire to get 18 all the way through. But so you talk about that a little bit of the evolution from ShiftKey 1.0 to 2.0, and maybe let's fast forward a little bit to the here and now. Like, what is ShiftKey in its current form?
ShiftKey right now is nothing like we ever thought it was going to be, right? It's not, I've heard people say, I didn't dream that far. I think that's the truth. We never thought it was going to be what it is today. Today, office is located in Williams Square in Irving, for those of you that are in Irving. We've got 450 internal employees, about 25,000 nurses that actively use our product every single day nationwide. It's a large company, right? You're managing processes, you're managing people, you're managing the multiple layers that get added on when you have the type of growth that we did. Right now, Mike Vitek, the name I mentioned earlier, right? Mike Vitek serves our CEO now. He was my boss when we worked at Staff Care. And Tom and I both wanted him to be a part of it. We knew that Mike was a great leader. He was somebody that could help us drive the type of growth. You start to see the evolution of, hey, I'm building something, to now I've built it and I've accomplished what I set out to do. And now you have to nurture it, you have to grow it. That comes with so many different layers of oversight and management. And that's where ShiftKey is now. We've gone through 2 acquisitions and still trying to grow. The market is obviously, it's resettling a little bit post-COVID, especially in our market, but we're starting to see like the Coke Pepsi thing, right? You're seeing a lot of companies out there that are starting to not make it. I think it was easy for anybody to start a company a couple years ago. You get a loan for no interest, right? Well, nowadays you're starting to see these companies that can't survive that. So we're trying to establish ourselves as maintaining our spot as being a leader in the industry.
Yeah. Well, I think for most high growth businesses, there's a catalyst point or an inflection point or something that happens within the market that shifts a perspective or an opportunity. And sometimes you don't even know that it's going to come to fruition necessarily. But I think, we talked about a couple catalyst points that help drive some of the growth. And I think one of them you'd mentioned kind of back to the old days, the 1.0, showing up to some conferences and things like that, and this whole notion of healthcare staffing or nurse staffing was kind of taboo at the time, and now it sounds like maybe that's how the ecosystem works today. So maybe just chat a little bit about perspective on that, and how did that help drive some of the growth, and then I think there was also some points around COVID in and of itself kind of catalyzing some of the incremental growth there too. So maybe just talk about kind of the evolution and what really spurred the growth and the hockey stick, and then we can kind of go from there.
I mean, I think a lot of it was like, anytime you're building something, you've got this idea of like what you want it to be, and at some point you have to realize that even though you want it to be this, there are things that are going to happen. There's going to be hurdles. There's going to be potholes. You have to be willing to change who you are as a company, right? You have to rebuild that company, and if you always focus on just like what it is you want and you're not listening to what's going on around you, I think inevitably you're never going to be as successful as you should, right? We did a great job of listening to our clients, and prior to ShiftKey, when everybody reads ShiftKey started in 2016, and so you see the story of like 2016 to 2023, a company becomes a double unicorn. Great story, right? It didn't happen in that time frame. That's just when we changed the name. We reiterated the company, changed it, and decided to pivot. And we pivoted because previous we were Da Vinci Staffing, and people didn't want to use a staffing company. It was kind of a black eye on the market. They knew they needed to because there's a national nurse shortage, but ultimately it came down to, we don't want to use you, it costs too much, the nurses aren't that great, we want this continuity of care. But we knew that they were going to have to use us. And now we build this software and we start seeing like, man, could this work? Could we convince a 60-plus-year-old DON who's running a facility to now get off of the phone and get on a software and be able to do this? And this is 2012, 2013, this idea starts to happen, right? 2013, if you look, is about the year Uber starts to show up in Dallas-Fort Worth. And so the idea starts to kind of sink in that, hey, software marketplaces, they can work, but now we got to go convince the world and our end users that this is something that will work. Probably around 2014, 2015, we decide, we start to see that this is gonna work. We tested different systems. It wasn't one we custom built, but we tested a lot of different systems, and we ultimately found one we really liked, but they wouldn't change. Again, they weren't listening to their end user. They were just a very static staffing platform, and we would use it. And we found out real quick that these DONs and these healthcare facilities, they would use a product like that. And then that starts to create a whole slew of other problems, right? Now you have, at the time, probably 150 clients that are now logging in, and they're loading up a ton of shifts, and they're requesting nurses. And so now we're like, well, how are we gonna get all these nurses in fast enough? Now here comes the next phase of development, right? At first it was just proof of concept. Could we get some money to use it? Well, now they are using it. And now we've got to figure out how do we onboard as many nurses as we possibly can. We have to stop taking 16-page packets and filling them out through paper. We have to figure out how to automate that process, right? You start, like, scalability. A lot of people will say, oh, I want to scale my business, right? And I think a lot of people make a mistake of scaling a business by increasing the amount of complexity that comes with the business. They start adding layers. Layers mean more processes. To me, scaling the business was, how do we simplify it? How do we make it so much more simple for us that it allows us to be able to really focus on our mission and what we want to do and find that clarity through the simplification of it. And once we started to see, people using it, now it's like, okay, let's go build an onboarding system. Let's go figure out how to bring these nurses in droves. And then you start attacking problems like APIs. Like, healthcare industry is very outdated, right? And so we have to go in and we have to figure out, how do we check a nurse's license without manually doing it? Well, let's build an API, or let's data scrape through a website. And so, like, funny story, we go to I think it was Tennessee. We go to Tennessee and we're like, all right, we need to be able to check a nurse's license. If she puts in Matt Creason, I want to be able to see, is this person a nurse? Well, we figured out real quick in Tennessee that you couldn't get through the CAPTCHA that they had on their website. Luckily, our CTO figured out that if you looked at the URL had a JPEG and it had a number. And that JPEG number would always display the same CAPTCHA every single time, but it might say JPEG 1, JPEG 2, JPEG 3, JPEG 6. And he figured out real quick that, hey, JPEG 6 always shows these same numbers. So then we made the code say, well, if this shows in the URL, enter this in the CAPTCHA, and we were able to break through that system. So we're constantly, we're trying to innovate, but we're getting these roadblocks in our way constantly. And so it's this constant shift of, how do we continue to build this product? We know it worked. And we're just constantly taking these problems as they come. If we would have just said, no, this is how we want to do it, good luck. We would have never been able to do it. It was challenging enough, but getting through a lot of those road humps it made it more interesting, more fun.
Yeah, adaptability, that's great. You mentioned quite a bit there around the development and the product and the evolution. No, that's great. But I think that segues nicely into, let's maybe talk a little bit about how the development process works. So, you mentioned you kind of bootstrapped everything early on, so you were fortunate to have the successful staffing business in and of itself that kind of funded some of the early development. And then there was also an awareness that you and Tom weren't necessarily the tech guys. And so talk about that inflection point of, when it made sense to bring in a technical partner, and then how that evolved through the development cycle. And I know there was some offshoring involved in some of that stuff too. So just maybe chat a little bit about the product development piece of it. We don't have to get super code writing technical, but
yeah, I don't speak that language. I've seen ShiftKey and it looks like the Matrix to me every time I look at it. So. I think it was inevitable at some point that we tried to outsource it. We tried to take products and, like I said, develop them on our own and figure out how to add these little, pieces of the puzzle that would make it work, but ultimately it never would. And so probably about 2014, 2015, we reach out to Tom's next door neighbor, happened to just play football, this guy named Ralph Marchinsky. We contact Ralph, we tell him, hey, we're trying to build this system. I learned real quick that software developers, they look for the exit. What's the idea? How can I come in? How can I build it? How can I get an exit and move on to my next project, right? And I think at first Ralph kind of looked at this and was like, you guys got no chance of making this thing work. And then we started to catch a little bit of attention through some VC companies. There was a lot of back and forth talk of using our software that we had. And Ralph's like, look, man, I'm from Poland. I've got a dev shop in Poland. Let's just outsource this to my guys out there and let's see if we can make something work. And it did work. And when it started to work, Ralph goes, all right, I got to quit my job at Under Armour and I got to come work for you guys. Like, what a step to take, right? He's in Austin. He's helping build apps like MyFitnessPal, if you guys have ever used that. Incredible developer. Lucky for us, he was both a front end and a back end developer. I think that was huge in our success of him being able to write the code and know what it needed to look like on the front, but still be operational on the back. And that was ultimately when it became the structure of, here's Tom, who's acting as a CEO. Here's Matt, who's COO, who's driving the business development. And it became this nice flow of communication between us. here's what I can do with the system. Okay, but Ralph, here's what our clients are telling us we need, right? This is right when healthcare reform is going on too. So we've got all these different compensation structures that are changing for our clients. How can we show them how many nurses are working at a given time? They get compensated based on that. And it was a nice ebb and flow for us. The communication was very productive. There wasn't a lot of roadblocks in the way there. We were able to convey the message across, get product through, and ultimately create a product that our clients wanted to use. And we listened to them, and we would constantly source their opinions and what they needed to maximize their business.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, you mentioned some things the other day around how automation changes the workforce, and how obviously that spurred a lot of the growth, but it also had some ancillary impacts as well in terms of the folks that were needed, and what their role was within the organization, and some tough decisions to some extent had to be made as well. And I know many of us are looking at that within our own businesses as we start to leverage automation tools and otherwise. Like, what does that mean for our workforce? But what did that mean to you, and kind of how did you navigate that?
I mean, yeah, you go back to like pre-shift key days, right? Everything was done over the phone. And nothing was automated, right? 16-page packets we were filling out. We were calling clients manually. We were going through the staffing was all done, with one person. And at that time, I'll tell you, like our best account manager was doing about 3,000 nursing hours a week, and he was killing it. We finally decided, okay, this system is ready to be unleashed. We're going to push it out, and we're going to let it happened. And when we did that, that was the ultimate pivot. That's when the name Shift Key came out in 2016. It was like, are we going to be Da Vinci staffing with the Shift Key product? We would sit at Javier's and have these conversations every night, like, how are we going to, what's the branding going to be here? And we kind of had that social network moment, where Justin Timberlake tells Zuckerberg in the movie, like, hey, drop the and just call it Facebook. And we were like, this is ridiculous. Let's just call it Shift Key and be done with it and rebrand it. And when we did that, everything went automation from that point. And we had about 30 employees that worked for us, and we really only needed 5. Probably one of the worst days I can remember was bringing in a whole group of people and telling them, like, hey, tomorrow you don't have a job. And we did our best part to severance packages and take care of the people, but ultimately we didn't need them. Fast forward when the product, that same account manager who's doing 3,000 hours with automation does about 40 to 50,000 hours a week now. When you have that kind of growth, and that we didn't replace the workforce as much as we just streamlined their ability to do more. But ultimately, now we have, like I said, 450, probably 150 of those people are product or business development people now, and that's kind of the metric. At some point, you figure out, like, how much can one of these people do before it is just too much, right? And we kind of adapted the let's get smaller to get bigger approach at some point. Now we don't let account managers get that big, but that was a testament to what this technology could do, and being able to just streamline the entire process.
Yeah. I caught the Javier's reference there too. Between all the golf and Javier's meetings, I feel like I should have been working for you at the time. But maybe get into some more juicy stuff here. Can you talk a little bit about valuation or revenue growth? Like, we've talked a little bit about there being incremental growth and kind of this explosive kind of transition from 2016 onward, but to the extent that you're able, it'd be great to share just some directional context, be helpful.
Most of this stuff is public. You guys can read about Shift Key and what we were able to do, but 2016 product rolls out. By 2017, 2018, we have proof of concept. We have the people who have, the first outliers that are deciding to do business with you. By about 2019, we're doing about $15 million in revenue, not crazy. 2020, that number goes up to about 85 million. And like, nobody can sit here and lie and say that COVID didn't help our business. I think we were in the right position at the right time. Our product was ready to go. We brought in Mike around the same time, and we knew that, like, okay, this is working in Texas, it's working in about 13 other states that we're working in, but now we need to go attack the United States. Let's go out and start gaining market share. The minute we make that decision, we get a phone call, and it's like, hey, would you guys be interested in selling your company? And we're like, never even thought about it. Let's talk about it. So we go in and we meet with this company. They tell us, hey, we think you guys are worth about 50 million bucks. And at the time, we were like, oh my gosh, we're gonna be rich. Let's take it. And we ultimately decide, like, nah, let's just keep going. 6 months later, COVID hits. We get a phone call from the guys that had helped us with that deal, and they're like, man, you guys should probably think about going back to the market and looking. So we're like, all right, fine, whatever. We go back. immediately we have about 350 IOIs come in around the 150 to 200 million mark. And we go through the whole process through an entire year. I'm on the phone call. Thank God for my wife, Amanda, helping me with my kids, being able to be a father and being able to build a company. Anybody who can successfully do that and be the best business owner and be a great father, it's incredibly hard to do. It's a testament to what you're willing to do, and you need a strong partner with you. But ultimately, we decided to go with Lorient Capital. Lorient came in. They said we could get the deal done. We'd do it. A year later, we recapitalized. We're doing around $850 million in revenue. We recapitalized, $2.2 billion valuation. People say hockey stick is what you're looking for. I tell everybody it was more like Blue Origin, right? We didn't even, it just went through the roof. But, it looks good on paper when you say like, oh man, look how fast we went from this to this. But like, what does that take to do that? What infrastructure do you have to put in place? We're rebuilding our company every 90 days. The amount of people that we had to layer on, the amount of processes, procedures that had to go into place. The complexity got real, and we didn't have a choice. Luckily, we were in the right place at the right time, and we were ready to take that kind of growth. Today, we're still sticking around similar numbers, so we haven't seen a huge retraction, and it's just a testament to what we built. I think ShiftKey actually, we looked one day, the system had actually been down for 6 minutes and 30 seconds in the entirety of its existence. So all the IT that went into it too, we didn't even experience a lot of downtime either.
That growth's insane. And one thing that you mentioned that you were really proud of was, the culture, and obviously having to rebuild the company every 90 days, but to try to maintain some element of culture, and that was something that you were really proud of. And maybe just speak briefly about, what culture means to you in a business, and why it's important to try to maintain that even with such incredible growth.
I think it's easy for people to, you can sit here and you can look at my website and you could say, well, I know what you guys do. Okay, well, how do you do it? I tell you about the product. But a lot of people don't ask questions like why? Like, why do you do it, right? Why, I think, is really what ultimately defines that culture, right? And for us, we tried to hire people and we would figure out what their why was, right? For me, my grandmother was in a nursing home, right? And I saw the lack of staffing that they had in there, ultimately how it affected a person I loved, right? And so for me, that was my why. Everybody else, some people's why was just they wanted to make money. That's fine, but once you find that why, then you can start setting a mission around that why. And you get your those first people that come on board with you when you're a startup, and you get those people that we call in the proverbial canoe, right? Like they understand the mission we're trying to build. But at what point do you hire so many people that eventually it turns into like, man, they're not really in the canoe. This is just a job for them, right? We offer a great career path. We offer them an avenue to success. But ultimately, like, they could just leave tomorrow and go take another job, right? And for me, like, especially stepping away after we had our second acquisition, I go into ShiftKey now. Mike's still a great friend of mine. I'll go in and I still see a lot of the same things that we implemented when it comes to the culture. I still see the layers being taught those same things. I don't think there's anything more rewarding. You can have a revenue growth, you can have a great valuation, but there's nothing more fulfilling than being able to go in and these are the things we implemented, whether it be, a weekly, like, hey, this is a book and we're all gonna read about leadership, right? We're all learning leadership as we built this company. Tom and I saw leadership through a business that we worked at that ultimately wasn't the style of leadership we wanted to lead, and we figured that out. And so we're learning leadership as we're teaching other people what we're learning, and they're teaching the next layer and the next layer and the next layer down. And so to be able to go back today and be able to see those same things going, I mean, that's the most rewarding thing. I think it's the fundamental reason that ShiftKey was able to get to that success level it had.
Yeah, and you mentioned not still active in the day-to-day running the company, obviously very, very close friends with the CEO, and so still involved in that capacity. But you made the comment that there's people who build companies and there's people who run companies. And so how did you know? Like, what was the point in time where you were like, it's time for me to go play golf every day? But.
I said that to you, and then I thought, like, how did I know, right? It's obviously some of it's financially motivated, I won't lie, but the other side of it is also like, what was my mission? What did I want to accomplish, right? I knew that what we were building was going to revolutionize the way these healthcare facilities staff their buildings. You can't go form a staffing company today in the healthcare sector and not have a system like this. It's so hard to get business now if you don't have it. You're competing against, there's 20 or 30 of us out there that are doing this thing, right? And so for me, I think it came down to like, I knew that we had built it. I knew that we had realized the goal. I saw people adopting the system, and we were signing on big corporations. And we weren't just, at first it was like, hey, let's get this one facility here, this group of facilities. Now we were signing on life care health services, and they're in 20 different states. And they're picking up the phone and they're calling all their facilities saying, hey, we now use ShiftKey to staff our buildings. I think at that point, you start seeing the different layers of like, now we have to run it, right? Now it's not just about survival. It's not just about making it or proving like, hey, let's don't run out of money. Let's make sure Marcos gets his money from our loan that he gave us, It turned into now we have to nurture it. We have to continue to grow it, and we got to bring in people and give them a great career path. There are people who are good at that. There's people who are great at that. Then there's other people who are great at it's time to build it. We got to survive. And I realized that I wasn't the let's let it grow and let me nurture it. There were other people I knew that were much more talented at doing that, and I stepped back.
Yeah, and you guys should be tremendously proud of what you built, obviously, and not only a great company that grew incrementally, but obviously, had a great mission in terms of, helping fix a component of the healthcare system. And so, kudos to you guys on that. Maybe it's kind of a parting question here, and had a few other fun ones, but maybe we'll save that for a networking hour. But, trying to take it full circle, we had some similar backgrounds. We're both from Irving, and obviously a great success story here. But is there any message you'd like to leave everyone with about your background and how it culminated, and obviously built a very successful company with an exit? But any other kind of parting comments that you'd like to make?
Yeah, no, I take being from Irving with pride. I think a lot of people that grew up in Irving, they feel because of that, their pathways to success are extremely limited, and they don't have the opportunity. Oh, if I don't go to an Ivy League school, if I don't have a great education, if I don't have access to a lot of money, I immediately cannot do what you did. And it's just absolutely not true. And I love to sit up here, and I'm still the same guy I was back then. I'm just as humble, I'm just as fun to hang around with, but I also did it with 42 college hours from a junior college, right? You gotta have grit, you gotta be willing to take things, you gotta be able to continue to push yourself. There's no room, nobody cares, that, oh, the world did you wrong, or, oh, this law came out, and now all of a sudden you gotta completely change the way your company works. We were able to move quickly, and I love to be able to go in front of people, like my mom being a teacher. I love to go back to Irving and tell people, like, no, you don't have to have all that stuff that the world somehow has conditioned us to think is a prerequisite to success. That's not. Work hard, get up, don't make excuses. People say, like, did you think you were ever gonna fail? I said, I don't even know that word I never used it other than the word I used to describe my competition. It never was even an option. I couldn't. I had too much on the line. I had to get it done. And I think if you have that safety net of, oh, I've got an unlimited amount of funds that I can access, that drive is not in you. That fire is not it's not getting stoked the way it should. And so I love, that's always my message to people. Like, it doesn't matter where you come from. It's cliche a little bit, but I'm a living proof of it. I sit up here and, yeah, man, I went to Irving and I made it. You can too.
Yeah, man, I love that, and obviously thanks so much for being open and sharing, and I hope everybody appreciated hearing a little bit about the journey there. And I guess in the last couple of seconds we have, ShiftKey was obviously a big supporter of the Mavs there for a while, so what'd you think about the Luka trade, our crazy lottery pick? Like,
raise your hand if you liked the Luka trade, right? That answers my question. Yeah, ShiftKey obviously was a big sponsor. It's unfortunate. I think that, 1.8% chance that we got the first round draft pick might have saved the franchise a little bit.
The league had nothing to do with that, I'm sure.
I'm sure money didn't either, right? Whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but we did so much with the community through the Mavs, like the charity events we got to be a part of. Like, we'll always be Mavs fans for life, right? You just sometimes leadership makes mistakes. Sometimes leadership needs to listen to the people that it supports and it works with. I don't think that was probably the right decision that everybody wanted to see happen, but hey, a decision was made, so now they got to figure out how to make it work. So hopefully they can bounce back from it.
Good deal. Well, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you, everybody. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, Matt and Chase, thank you all very much. If y'all stay up here really quick, we just have a token of our appreciation from the chamber. But Matt, it's always humbling to hear about just the common folks coming up from South Irving and doing big things like you're doing. So thank you again for y'all's time. This is just a token of our appreciation from the chamber for y'all. Look forward to staying in touch with y'all, and thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, appreciate
thank
it.
you. Yeah, thank you. And Thank you again to all of our sponsors.